everybody, Dan here, Scootering Magazine, and today we are joined by Stephen Hattersley of WildWood Legal. WildWood are a specialist law firm who cover a number of areas, but one of their specialist departments is helping scooterists. Stephen is a scooterist of 30 plus years and has a regular column in the front of Scootering Magazine. I'll pop some links to subscriptions and single copy deals in the comments below. And if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, then just check out the column in the front of the magazine. Stephen's email is in there. I'll also pop that in the comments below. And then if you have any questions that stem from these videos, feel free to send them in. Okay, we'll jump straight in and we're going to run through a series of questions which quite often crop up from scooterists and see what answers Stephen can give us. Stephen, one of the popular things that scooterists like to do is fit a big bore kit to their scooters. Often they have a 125cc scooter and a 125cc license, and they sometimes like to perhaps go up a little bit more in capacity to help them with performance. What are the implications of that?
Hi, Dan. Well, I can fully understand it. First of all, the very first two-wheel thing I had was an RD50LC, his motorbike, and I had that did 38 miles per hour on the flat. It was a 50, and that was with me sort of lying down on the fuel tank. So putting a big bore kit on is fully understandable. Yeah, it can be done, and I know a lot of people like to do it, but with my lawyer hat on, if you want to be legal about it, there are certain steps you'll need to follow. DVLA will need to be notified, and your insurers will as well. It's a bit risky doing it and not telling your insurers, because if it ever came down to it and it was found out, you wouldn't have insurance cover. It's a matter for the individual whether I think the likelihood of it being found out that they've got a big bore in there is probably fairly slim, to be honest, because the only way it'd ever be found out is if the engine was stripped down, and you don't really like to think about situations when a scooter engine gets stripped down by police engineers. But yeah, it's legally speaking, certain steps need to be taken, but it's a matter for the individual whether they do that, I suppose.
And that leads on to the next question quite neatly. One of the big things that all scooterists like to, or the majority of scooters like to do, is alter their scooter in some way. Now, sometimes it's a fairly subtle alteration. Sometimes it can be full-blown paint jobs, exhausts, various different suspension and brake components. Who do scooterists need to notify if they go about those changes?
If it's a fairly simple thing, paint jobs, exhaust, things like that, then you're not going to have to tell the DVLA about it, but you are going to have to tell your insurers about it. Okay. I know a lot of people might think, I can't be bothered telling my insurers, but if you're talking about your pride and joy in your scooter, and it's something that you love enough to spend money improving, so it's well worth a call to your insurers. The chances are, if it's something like paint work, it's not going to be a big change in the premium, if at all. If it's something like a performance-enhancing exhaust, it might put a few quid extra on the insurance premium, but I think you'd have to be hard pushed to say that's not money well spent.
Yeah,
you want to make sure that if anything does happen, you can't imagine the worst thing your scooter being nicked, apart from your scooter being nicked and not being insured to get some money back on it. So yeah, I think it's well worth telling your insurers about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it really, was one question which came in from a reader, and I was absolutely fascinated by this one. And essentially, the question boils down to what happens if my scooter is stolen from my driveway and it's not locked with a chain. And this stemmed from a guy who had actually come home from a rally. He now, in hindsight, probably feels that somebody in a van had seen him on his scooter, possibly, and maybe trailed him to his house. When he got home, he parked on his driveway. He went into his house to just get a brew and get the keys for the garage and one thing. He was in the house 5 minutes, and by the time he came out, somebody had thrown his scooter in the back of a van and driven off. Have you come across scenarios where that sort of thing's happened and insurers have been difficult about it?
Every day of my life is spent dealing with insurers who like being difficult, to be honest, Dan. It's, on the specific facts, I mean, it's pretty tough going that if that's happened in such a short space of time, it's a horror show. But it depends on the terms of your policy. All insurers will ask you where your scooter is going to be kept at night. If you say it's going to be chained up, and it isn't chained up, you can guess what the insurers are going to say if you try and make a claim on it. I don't know what the outcome was on that case, but I think you've always got the option, if the insurers dig in, which they will quite often do, you can go to the insurance ombudsman, and there are quite a few reported cases where insurance decisions have been overturned. There was one where I think it was a push bike rather than a motorbike. There's a guy who lived in a block of flats. There's a designated building which was locked which all the residents had locks for, and his bike was kept in there, but it wasn't chained to the wall. Someone broke into it, took the bike, insurers refused to pay. There was one where I think it was a push bike rather than a motorbike. There's a guy who lived in a block of flats. There's a designated building which was locked which all the residents had locks for, and his bike was kept in there, but it wasn't chained to the wall. And it was only, they had to involve the insurance ombudsman, but once they did, then they managed to get some common sense, and the insurers did pay out. But insurers will look for anything they can find to try and get out of paying for these sort of things. So it's just a question of making sure you know what your policy says about what you need to do with keeping your scooter safe, and making sure you do stick to that, even if it's those very short periods where you think you're going to be safe and it wouldn't really cross your mind otherwise.
And I think that is the key point, knowing what your specific policy says, because everybody's policy is different, and somebody might have a policy where that claim isn't a problem, and somebody might have a policy where there's a clause in there which makes that claim a problem.
Yeah, I'm looking at my policy says that my scooter's kept in a garage at night because I'm looking to have a garage next to the house, so I do keep it in there. But I know that if I kept that, if it was on the drive and chained up and stolen, I know they wouldn't want to pay out on that. It's all about what, as you say, what your policy says, and making sure you're trying.
It's interesting because when my insurer for my scooter, when I was going through the details of that, and one of the questions asked me, where is it kept on a night? And I said, in a garage. And then they specifically asked me what the garage was built of. And my garage is stone with a slate roof. And so I verbalized that during the phone call. So I'm assuming that is now recorded. But quite often I want to bring the scooter out of the garage, put it in the shed where I can work on it. And quite often it'll be in bits or in a position where it's not rideable. And I often wonder, when I leave it in there overnight, if I often think, if this was now stolen from a wooden shed with a flimsy glass door, what would happen then? Is that something you've ever come across?
I think they'd dig in. I don't think they'd pay out on that then.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd pay out on that, because it's not a garage. There's a big difference between a shed and a garage.
Yeah.
And mainly from a security point of view, I don't know what the shed's made of. I'm guessing wood, is it?
It's essentially what would be a wooden summer house with with glass, glass windows and that. I alarm it, I padlock the door, I have a shackle and chain in there, but at the end of the day, it's not where I told them I was going to keep it.
Is this where your wife sends you when you're misbehaving, with that shackle with the ball and chain?
She doesn't have to send me there. I spend most of my time there. So in the event that a scooterist does suffer any kind of loss, whether that be a theft or an accident or an injury, what are the first few steps that you would recommend that they take first of all?
I'd love to say give me a call, but being honest, the first thing to do is let your insurers know whatever's happened. They'll want to be notified early on, and they, depending on what needs doing, if it's repairs that need doing, they may be able to help you with that. If it's getting you back on the road in some way, they may be able to help you with that. One thing they will try and do, they'll try and press their solicitors onto you. They'll call them their recommended panel solicitors. What they mean by that is that they're firms that will pay them a fee for each case that they send their way.
Right.
Without exception, there'll be a pile 'em high, sell 'em cheap organisation with someone who's probably got 500 to 700 files, and your chances of getting a scooterist dealing with a case will be close to zero. So once you've spoken to the insurers, if you think you want to make a claim for something as well, I'd have a chat to a specialist solicitor about it, and they should guide you through what to do.
Great stuff. Well, thanks very much for your time. I'm Dan Clare,
No problem.
Magazine. You're Stephen Hattersley, WildWood Legal. See everybody on the next video.